Hello, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students. This is Mrs. Ternitza with your next library lesson. If you remember last week, our lesson was knowing the difference between the two main genres, fiction and nonfiction. And some of you did the activity and you showed me that you understand the difference between fiction and nonfiction. And thank you to my friends that did. You did a great job. Well, this week we're going to concentrate strictly on just fiction. If you remember, we said that fiction starts with an F, like the word fake, so we know that it's make believe, like stories. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so our learning intention is I can identify fiction genres. So we are going to talk about the different types of fiction. And success is that I can successfully help my teacher fill out the All About the Genre graphic organizer. And what we are going to listen to is it's a fiction story, but then we're going to decide together what type of fiction it is, and then we're going to fill out the graphic organizer together. Okay, so let's talk about it. How do good readers better understand stories? We've talked about this before. We've talked about the Just Right books, using the five-finger rule, making sure that it's something that you enjoy reading. We've also talked about making connections, that's really important, the text to text, text to self, um, text to world. We've also talked about making predictions can be very important in understanding stories better. So maybe, what you think is going to happen in the story before you read it and see if your prediction is correct or not. Also, learning new words, right? We can learn new words. Um, so good readers better understand stories if they come across words they're not familiar with or they're not sure about, and they find out what the words mean, kind of like your sight words, new vocabulary. Also, why do authors write books? Well, when we think about it, the two main genres, we have fiction, which is make believe or fake, and we have nonfiction, which is about real things. It could be a biography or autobiography about a real person, or it could be something like, something real like dancing or sports or cooking. So it all depends on what the author is interested in doing. Are they interested in writing a story, a make believe story to entertain you because they want you to like the story and feel good about the story? Or do they want to um, write a nonfiction book? Do they want you to know more about something that is real? So maybe if there's someone who is really good at sports, or they might know a lot about cooking or dancing or maybe cars or traveling, because a lot of times people get books about traveling to different places that they've never been before. So maybe the author is really good at one of those and that they want to give their information to people. So when people research and read about it to get to know, to learn more about it, they want to be able to do that. So those are reasons why authors write books. Okay, so let's review what a literary genre is. So if you remember, literary genres are the different types of stories or information that we find in books. So different type of stories would be fiction, and then information, if you remember, would be in a nonfiction book about something real. But today we're going to concentrate on fiction. And fiction is a story with characters and events that have been made up in the author's mind. So remember, it's fantasy, it's fake, it's make believe. Okay, so when we explore genres, the fiction genres, these are the different types of fiction. We have traditional literature like fairy tales, we have fantasy, we have mystery, we have historical fiction, and look, you have a clue word in there, history. We have realistic fiction, and there's a clue word in there, real. And we also have science fiction, and that clue word in there is science. And if we take a look here at this cover, Pete the Cat and his four groovy buttons, and I know a lot of you have listened to that story and you really like it. I wonder what type of fiction would Pete the Cat go under? Well, he's not really a fairy tale. He doesn't have mystery. He doesn't really have to do with history or anything real or anything to do with science. But I think he could be fantasy, right? Because he is a cat who can talk and ride a skateboard and he wears clothes. So he would be fantasy because cats really can't do that, can they? All right. Okay, so now we're going to listen to this video about the literary genre fiction, and I will stop it once in a while so that we can talk a little bit about what it's telling us about the genre fiction. Okay, so it says fictional stories include settings, characters, and or plots. And remember we talked about this when we talked about the story elements, and it's been made up in an author's imagination. Okay, here's traditional literature. Stories that are passed down from one group to another in history. This includes folk tales, legends, fables, the one that you guys are mostly familiar with, which is fairy tales, tall tales, and myths from different cultures. And here's one that a lot of you are familiar with, Cinderella. We also have Paul Bunyan, and here's also a legend, the legend of the Blue Bonnet. And I'll have to play the story for you soon about Paul Bunyan and Legend of the Blue Bonnet, just so that you guys can hear it and see what it's all about. Okay, another type of fiction is fantasy. And remember, we said Pete the Cat was fantasy? It's a story including elements that are impossible, such as talking animals or magical powers. And remember how Miss T said that Pete the Cat, since he was a talking cat and was doing things that would be impossible, like riding a skateboard. Okay, and here are some examples. Here's a book about fairies called The Fairy Realm. Also, Click Clack Moo, Cows That Type. I think a lot of you might have heard this story before. Remember about the cows that type a letter to the farmer because they're upset about the things that are going on in the barn and they want him to help them. And then there's the chocolate touch. Some of you may have heard this story before, and this is pretty cool. This is fantasy because it turns out that everything that the character touches turns into chocolate. Okay, we have mystery. Mystery is a suspenseful story about a puzzling event that is not solved until the end of the story. And some of you guys might be familiar with some of these series that we have in the library. There's A to Z Mysteries. This one's called The Bald Bandit. Here's one called Mystery on the Docks. And here's one, The Cam Jansen. That's also a series where it's the girl character who goes around and solves mysteries using her camera. Okay. Okay, here's the one called historical fiction. And remember Miss T said the key word, a clue here was history? Well, historical fiction, it's still a fictional story, but it takes place in a particular time period in the past. Often the setting is real, but the characters are made up from the author's imagination. So in this one, How Many Days to America? It's called a Thanksgiving story. And here you can see You can have a clue from the cover of the book that it's probably that are immigrants that are trying to get to America. And so these characters are maybe made up, but it is during a time in history when people traveled, tried coming over here to America. Also, here under the quilt of night, and this probably has something to do with the Underground Railroad when slaves were trying to get their freedom. And the characters in this book are made up, but it's during that time period when slavery had not been abolished yet by Abraham Lincoln, and so the slaves were trying to get their freedom. And then meet Felicity, an American girl. And this is Felicity is a made up character, but these books are set during the colonial times in America. So all of these are the characters are made up, but the story takes place during a specific time in history, um, like during when people immigrated to the United States, or during slavery, or during the colonial times. All those things did happen um, during history. Okay, now we have science fiction. And remember, Miss T said the key word is science? It's a type of fantasy, but it uses science and technology. So it still might have things that can't really happen, maybe like talking animals or different things like that. But it includes science and technology. Maybe robots or time machines, because here you can see there's like an astronaut. Here's a robot. The title of this book's called My Teacher is an Alien. This would be science fiction because you know it's a made up story, but it has to do with something with science, kind of like in outer space, like with aliens. And the Magic School Bus. That's a really good series too, where they travel through time and kind of like a time machine in the bus. And then My Robot Buddy. So here you can see it looks like a spaceship, and this looks like it might be an alien. So we know, and it has robot in the title. So that is a good hint that it would be science fiction. Okay, realistic fiction. And I know a lot of what you guys read is probably realistic fiction. And if you look in the title, the clue word is real. And it's a story using made up characters, but it could happen in real life. So, like Junie B. Jones and the stupid, smelly bus. Well, Junie B. Jones is a made up character, but the things that happen to her could happen in real life. Of course, there's a school bus, which we have in real life, and different things happen to her at school and at home. So it's a made up story, but those things could happen in real life. And this one, thank you, Mr. Falker. So this one has, and this is a really good story too, that I'll have to read to you guys sometime. So Mr. Falker is a made up character. He's a teacher in this story. And of course, this little girl here, she is a student, but she's a made up character in the story. But of course, these things could happen in real life with a teacher and a student in a school. Then you have Ramona Quimby. And of course, she's kind of like Junie B. Jones. She's a made up character, but the things that happen to her could happen in real life. So that's why it's called realistic fiction. It's still a made up story, but some of the things that happen in it, like going to school or being at home, can happen in real life. I'm gonna teach you how to sing it out. Come on, let me show you what it's all about. Okay, we will talk about nonfiction next week, but this week I just want to concentrate just on the different types of fiction. Okay, so we've gone over the different types of fiction. Now we are going to listen to a story called The Stray Dog. And then we are going to fill out our graphic organizer, where we're going to decide which type of fiction is The Stray Dog. And then we'll fill out a little bit more information about it, like the beginning and the middle and the end of the story. Okay, so let's take a listen to The Stray Dog.
The Stray Dog, written and illustrated by Mark Simons. It was a great day for a picnic. "What's this?" asked the father. "It's a scruffy little dog," said the mother. "He looks hungry," said the girl. "I think he wants to play," said the boy. The children played with him and taught him to sit up. They named him Willie. They kept playing until it was time to go. "Let's take Willie home," said the children. "No," said the father. "He must belong to somebody," explained the mother, "and they would miss him." On the way home, the girl said, "Maybe Willie doesn't belong to anybody." Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. During the week, all the family had Willie on their minds. Saturday. "Willie!" they all cried when he appeared, but Willie didn't stop. Willie was in a big hurry. "He has no collar. He has no leash," said the dog warden. "This dog is a stray. He doesn't belong to anybody." The boy took off his belt. "Here's his collar," he said. The girl took off her ribbon. "Here's his leash," she said. "His name is Willie, and he belongs to us." They took Willie home, and after that, they introduced him to the neighborhood, where he met some more interesting dogs. And Willie settled in where he belonged.
Okay, very cute story. Well, let's go back and see what we think about which type of fiction would that be. So it's called The Stray Dog. So it was a family who went on a picnic. They found a stray dog. They played with him while they were at the picnic, but they couldn't take him home with them right then. So they went home after the picnic and they thought about him all week. And then on Saturday, the next Saturday, they decided they'd go back and do another picnic. And who did they see? They saw Willie. And they were so excited. But what was going on? The dog catcher was chasing him. And then before the dog catcher could catch him and take him away, the little boy and the little girl were like, "He's ours." And then they used things like a hair ribbon and the belt to say that this was his collar and his leash. And of course, that made the dog catcher believe them. So they were able to take Willie home, which was very exciting for them. They gave him a bath and introduced him to the neighborhood. And so they gave Willie a forever home. And I know that they were super excited about it, and I'm sure Willie was too. But let's look. Is it a fairy tale? No, it's not really a fairy tale like we think of them, like Cinderella and Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. What about fantasy? Well, everything that happened in the story could have really happened. There weren't really any talking animals or things that wouldn't happen in real life, so I don't think it's fantasy. It wasn't really a mystery. Nothing happened to anybody that they were trying to solve, like a problem by the end of the story. What about historical fiction? Well, history. It didn't really talk about anything during any specific time in history. Realistic fiction. This makes my eyebrows go up. The word real. Were the things in the story, could they have happened in real life? We know the characters were made up, but there was a family and there was a dog. The family went on a picnic. They found a stray dog. Could that happen in real life? Sure. And then they thought about him and they went back. And then there was a dog catcher chasing him. Could that happen in real life? Sure. A lot of times dog catchers um, from the pound, they have to come out in case there are stray dogs or cats that need to be taken in and taken care of. So yes, that can happen in real life. So I agree with you. I think it is realistic fiction because the characters are made up, but everything that happened in it could have happened in real life. But let's just double check the last one, science fiction. Well, science is a clue word, but there really wasn't anything that could be science fiction in the story. There weren't robots, there weren't time machines, there weren't aliens or spaceships. So I would agree with you that it was realistic fiction. It was a made up story. Willie and the family were made up, but the things that happened in the story could happen for real. So let's go forward here to our activity. And Miss T is going to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, here we go. So we are going to say that the genre, the fiction genre, and we just talked about it, would be, let me make this a little bit smaller, realistic fiction. Okay, good job, guys. Okay, because we said that it was a made up story, but the things that happened in the story could have happened in real life. So tell me how you know. And we just talked about it. So we can say, let's make this smaller again. I think I'll make it even a little smaller. We can say the characters are made up, but the things that happened in the story could happen in real life. Okay, good job, guys. And I'm going to move this over here a little bit so we can see it. There we go. So how do we know it's realistic fiction? Because the characters are made up, but the things that happened in the story could happen in real life. All right, good job, guys. So let's review what happened. What were the events in the story? What happened at the beginning of the story? And Miss T kind of summarized it when we were talking about it. So think about it. Let's think. What happened at the beginning of the story? Well, if we remember, the family went on a picnic and they met a stray dog that they named Willie. So we can say the family went on a picnic and met a dog they named Willie. Okay, good job. And remember, they played with him, but then they had to go home and they didn't take him with them right then because that probably just wasn't the right time. Then what happened in the middle of the story? So what happened after they left and went home? So we could say the family went home and couldn't stop thinking about Willie all week long. So remember, at the beginning, the family went on a picnic and they met a dog they named Willie. In this one, we could also say they played with Willie. Then in the middle, the family went home and couldn't stop thinking about Willie all week long. Then what happened at the end? So they decided after the week, the next weekend came on this Saturday, they decided to go back to where they had their picnic. So we can say the family went back to where they had the first picnic. They found Willie, but what was going on? What happened to Willie when they saw him? But the dog, what did they call him? The dog warden, but we could say the dog catcher. But warden is another name for a dog catcher. But the dog catcher was chasing Willie. So the family went back to where they had the first picnic, or we could just say to where they had the picnic. So the family went back to where they had the picnic. They found Willie, but the dog catcher was chasing him. We can say the dog catcher was chasing him. They told the dog catcher that Willie belonged to them. They took Willie home and kept him forever. Okay, good job, guys. Let Miss T make this even a little smaller. There we go. I know it's small, but then you can read all of it. There we go. Whoops. Okay, there we go. All right, so we know that The Stray Dog was called realistic fiction. We know that because the characters are made up, but the things that happen in the story could happen in real life. At the beginning of the story, the family went on a picnic. They met a dog and they named Willie, and they played with Willie. In the middle, the family went home, but they couldn't stop thinking about Willie all week long. Then, at the end of the week, the family went back to where they had the picnic. They found Willie, but oh no, the dog catcher was chasing him. Well, just so that the dog catcher wouldn't take him, they told the dog catcher that Willie belonged to them. And then they took Willie home and kept him forever. Remember, they gave him a bath and introduced him to the neighborhood, and he was so happy. You could just tell. He was laying on his bed and he looked so happy. Okay, guys, good job. Well, I hope that you enjoyed learning about the different kinds of fiction, listening to the story, The Stray Dog. I really like that story. And picking which type of fiction you thought it was. Now, what you can do for me if you want, you could maybe pick a part of the story that you really liked and draw me a picture and share it with me. Or with Mom and Dad's help, you can message me right in Google Classroom for this assignment and maybe tell me about a book that you've recently read or that somebody has read to you. And then tell me what type of fiction genre you think it is. Do you think it is, oops, let Miss T go back down here to normal. Do you think it's a fairy tale or fantasy or mystery or historical fiction or realistic fiction or science fiction? Let Miss T know, because I would really love to know what what type of fiction you might be reading or somebody might be reading to you. I think that would be really cool for Ms. T to know. And you can also, like I said, draw a favorite part of your story from your favorite part of from the story, The Stray Dog, and share that with me too. Okay, guys, until next week. Next week we'll talk about the different types of nonfiction, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. So until then, you can always contact me through Google Classroom or email me if you need anything. Always follow directions from your teachers and your parents. Get your schoolwork done, and I will talk to you soon. Alrighty, bye bye.